We're still looking at stories concerning the economy, but this time right here at home in Nigeria. Now, the Boko Haram insurgency has had terrible consequences on Nigeria and its neighbors. Lives have been lost, people have been displaced, and there have been economic consequences as well. On today's show, we'll be looking at some of those consequences which the sect has caused. Businesses involving demand and supply and even services rendered are a shadow of what they used to be. Neighboring Cameroon, Chad and Niger have all been affected with incursions into border villages and transport routes. Fishing supplies, for instance, from Niger and Chad used to supply people in the northeastern parts of Nigeria like Baga and the Borno state capital Maiduguri, and buyers would come from within the country, but that's no longer the case. The insurgency, which has often exploited places which are soft targets like markets, have made businesses like this history. Borders were closed, supplies became a thing of the past, goods were destroyed, people were maimed, and some killed. There is a theory which suggests that part of the reasons the sect attacks soft targets is for recruiting purposes, especially with the collaborative efforts of the governments of Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. The sect is clearly running out of members and needs to regroup. Power supply has also suffered immensely based on the recurrent attacks in hotspots like Baga. The conflict has also taken a toll on the health and psychological state of people. This ultimately affects their businesses because those who are unhealthy cannot work, and even if their businesses manage to spring up again, healthy people need to run it, and most suffer from either injuries, high blood pressure, or the most common disease of them all, which is fear. Another economic consequence for those who are in hard-hit northeastern parts of Nigeria is access. Those who have goods in shops which survive the insurgency cannot get to the shops due to the military formation in those areas. So until the crisis is over, hope seems to be all they have. Joining us now is the head of the Channels TV business desk, Boston Omofaye. He's in studio with us live now. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. Now, we've been looking at the economic consequences concerning the Boko Haram sect, the impact it's had on both Nigeria and surrounding countries like Niger, Cameroon, and Chad. Could you give us more details about those consequences?
I think a very good and very enlightening report you just, a package you put together there for the show. I think one take-home there was the psychological effect. Oftentimes, those of us who are on the business and finance often look at what's the effect in terms of what you can say physically was the naira and kobo or dollars, the transport, there's no water, you don't have power supply and things like that. But when you look at that report and whoever put that package together, talk about the psychological effect, you need happy people, you need people who are mentally and psychologically sound and happy to go out every day to do whatever, to go to the farm, for example, to herd cattle to the waters to have a drink, or to carry out a few other nomadic business activities that you may have, moving from one part of the country to the other and going trans-border as well between Cameroon, Chad, and Mali. But when people are hounded into their homes, they're hounded by Boko Haram, the fear alone, what they call the fear factor. When that comes in, you can't put, it's difficult to put naira and kobo on top of that. So you find it very difficult. So even if we get Boko Haram completely wiped out today, we're still going to take time for some people to recover from the emotional and psychological effect of what the trauma they've gone through. You find people being killed every day, they're being maimed, their daughters are being taken from school and murdered, the boys are murdered, the girls are abducted. You heard about rape, you heard about so many atrocities going on in that part of the country. So it becomes extremely difficult to say this is it. But officially, the government, the Nigerian government, says the impact economically will be 0.5% on the GDP moving forward. Now, if you look at the economic situation of that particular part of the country, the Northeast it can be compared to the Southwest, for example, not the South-South. So it's actually been been a laggard on the economic scale of the regions in Nigeria, according to one report released about a year ago. So to that effect, but as little as it were, you would need to understand that below the ground in the northeast, that is one of the richest areas for mining in Nigeria. You have different type of minings that Nigeria had never extracted to its full potential in the northeast. So we're losing not just what is above the ground, which are first the human and the people who are there. They're losing their lives every day. They're losing their joy. They're losing the happiness of being alive to start with. Then they can't live. They can't have their daily bread. That's number two. As a nation, we're not harnessing these human and resources below the ground and above the ground for economic advantage. And that's very serious issues that the government, the authorities need to tackle very quickly.
Now, you've told us about the consequences, but I think Egypt has done a good job of giving an example with the just concluded Sharm el-Sheikh investment conference, which was over the weekend. And that's inspiring because of the conflict that exists in the country. So my question to you is, what lessons can the rest of Africa, learn from the Egypt example, that in the midst of the crisis, you can still try to make your nation rise above the economic situation, which was obviously caused by it?
For several years, you've seen that if you look at Africa, if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, you look